So we often put our needs aside when we have a relationship. We're thinking, okay, we're so in love. We really care about this other person. We have our needs, but we're not going to really prioritize them right now because the relationship is the only thing that matters. But the reality is, if you continue to put your needs aside, you're eventually not going to be happy. And so you really need to figure out what are your non negotiables in the relationship, both for you personally, but also for the relationship itself. The non negotiables are sort of like the rules of the game that you and your partner play.
It's kind of the boundaries in which we can navigate because the non-negotiables cannot be crossed. So you know, okay, this is a frame, and here we can navigate freely. And that's why it's important to really formulate these boundaries because otherwise you don't know where the limits are.
They recently did a study in Greece that showed that when there were fences around a play area or a playground, kids actually would engage with that fence. They would play around it, they would play on it, they would turn it into something. And it basically was signifying that no matter how old you are, whether you're a young kid or you're an adult, there's something about having boundaries that actually allows us to play within the confines, but also to know that we don't pass it. We don't have to go forward or we don't have to go over the fence in order to experience something. And it's really important to create those types of boundaries within your relationship as well. Creating those kinds of boundaries within your relationship enables you to feel safer. It allows you to feel like you know where the relationship is going, you know the rules of the game, you know how to interact with the other person, and there's something that also honors you during it. So I think that's a really important element, right? Esther Perel is a psychotherapist that is pretty well known, and she talks about how important it is to make sure that you communicate your boundaries. You communicate these non negotiables to your partner so that it's very clear upfront. And perhaps in the beginning of your relationship, you don't know exactly all the different non negotiables that you have, but over time, as soon as you hit that boundary, as soon as you hit that place, you really need to talk about it. You need to understand what is it that my non negotiable is? How do I want this relationship to be?
A very interesting example is if you're raised in an open house when there were always people coming over. And if that is different between you, you might need to agree on it. Because if it's non negotiable for me to have quiet time at home and really have no guests over all the time, then I need to share this because that's a non negotiable for me. But if Anna is more like, okay, good, we live in an open house and everybody can come in and whenever they want, well, that might create some tensions. So this is a conversation to have.
And non negotiables can apply to different things. They can apply to lifestyle, they can apply to food, they can apply to how you take care of your body, they can apply to anything where you find that a boundary cannot be crossed, or else it will affect your relationship in a negative way. So, for example, we have a non negotiable where when we're traveling, and we travel quite often, when we travel, we want to make sure that we're always communicating with one another. So, it's not like we'll go 7 days without speaking. We make sure that our non negotiable is that we connect with one another daily in a kind and thoughtful way, even if it's just one simple message to one another. The reason why we have this is actually goes back to our values. Our value is acting like a team. Then we have the non negotiable of making sure to check in with one another when we're traveling. So you can kind of see how, if you figure out what your values are, and we have another video on values, and it's also in the Love Plan book, then you'll also understand how to structure your non negotiables in a way that aligns with that. Another example might be if a non negotiable for me is that we have an open relationship. If that's a non negotiable no matter what, that might mean that my value is curiosity, exploration. But if my partner is not valuing curiosity and exploration, then that's going to create a really big tension. But it's really important to share this upfront, or else 1 month, 5 months, a year, 10 years down the line, you may say, oh, but that's what I always wanted. That's a non negotiable for me. But if you never communicated it, then it doesn't matter. It doesn't mean anything.
It is very important to early on in a relationship really have these conversations to know what is nice to have, what is a deal breaker, because then you can really create the frame in which you will have your relationship. And often they're built on the values that you have. So the values are there, then the non-negotiables are built on that.
If you're having a hard time to figure out what your non negotiables are, you can look back at past relationships and think about what worked, what didn't work, what really bothered me about that relationship or about the way that we interacted together. And by understanding what bothered you or by understanding what you would have done differently, you can come up with some non negotiables.
But then the problem arises if somebody crosses a non-negotiable. What do you do then?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think that for me, it's really important that communication is always present. So let's say you realize, okay, that was a non negotiable for me. We talked about it. Let's figure out why it was crossed, why this happened. But perhaps someone realizes over time that they have this non negotiable or this boundary and they didn't communicate it early on. What then? When should they communicate it?
As soon as they realize that it's very important for them.
Non negotiables are really important. They're setting the boundaries for your relationship, but also honoring what you care about and what your partner cares about. We actually just did a really amazing workshop on boundaries with a group here in Lisbon. If you're interested in learning more about boundaries, just email us at hello@mastersinrelationship.com and we can share some of those findings with you. Thanks.